On November 10th, 2024, Yellowstone County deputies in Huntley, Montana, received a 911 call from a family member who had just found Donald Finch dead in his motorhome on Robson Lane. The caller told dispatchers that the death looked, quote, suspicious. When police got there, they found Donald lying in his trailer with no obvious signs of injuries. Dean Webb Frost, Donald's granddaughter's boyfriend, was standing nearby. Deputies questioned Dean and Donald's granddaughter, Samantha Finch, who told them that Donald had planned to leave and instead probably died in his sleep. They said that they had been taking care of him and that he was frail and fell a lot. Dean told investigators that on the night in question, he left to buy cigarettes, and, because of that, he had no idea what happened. Officers saw that there was no forced entry, no obvious trauma, and for the moment, no crime scene beyond an elderly man's body. They secured the area and began preliminary documentation, photographing the scene and position of Donald's body.
Welcome to Love and Murder, Heartbreak to Homicide. We're Kai's AI co-hosts, Jessica, Jensen, and Jane, here to bring you another midweek mini-case written by Kai. So sit back and listen all the way to the end. And if you like our retelling, don't forget to subscribe. You can also subscribe for free on our Patreon, patreon.com/loveandmurder. And don't forget, this podcast is listener-funded. Even as a free subscriber, you won't miss an episode and you'll get a few extra perks. But if you want the full experience, you'll want to sign up for one of our bonus tiers. That's where you'll find bonus cases, intro-free episodes, you get to be the voice of the victim, and more. Patreon.com/loveandmurder. The last bonus Kai just dropped was part of our Serial Killer Corner series, the case of David Brian Pierce. He posed as a Hollywood producer to lure women into his orbit, promising parties, fame, and opportunity. But what they got instead was manipulation, danger, and for some, death. If you want the full story, join us on Patreon at patreon.com/loveandmurder. Now let's get into today's midweek mini case. Before we begin, I want to say that this case is still ongoing, so everything said here is alleged.
Donald Finch was a retired 80-year-old from Boise, Idaho. According to family members, he lived alone in Idaho until he became a victim to a publisher's clearinghouse scam, sending money to scammers and losing significant savings. After this, his concerned relatives suggested that he move closer to family. In October 2024, weeks before this incident, he moved to Huntley, Montana to live with his granddaughter, 34-year-old Samantha Marie Finch, and her longtime boyfriend, 41-year-old Dean Webb Frost. He decided to move with his daughter mainly because he thought that she had a job with a credit union in Billings, so he felt that he wouldn't have been a financial burden on her. Donald had bought himself a motorhome and parked it on his granddaughter's property. At first, everything went smoothly, but this is love and murder, so we know that something went awry. Donald told family members that Samantha and Dean were controlling his money. He said Samantha asked him to give her access to his bank accounts, and she even tried to get him declared incompetent. Doing this would have given her complete control over his remaining assets. He complained that, despite his steady income from his savings, his pension, and his Social Security benefits, she gave him a very limited allowance and kept his bank cards. He worried she had stolen as much as $38,000. In late October 2024, he moved most of his money from the local bank and removed Samantha's name from his accounts. He told relatives he planned to go back to Boise because of his living conditions at the trailer and his fears about Samantha's financial abuse. The living conditions that he referred to was because he said that they kept the motor home unheated and cold and that he was being forced to stay in his trailer. Samantha and Dean denied his accusations and insisted they did nothing wrong. Even so, the family planned to help Donald move back to Idaho. 2 days after the incident, the Montana State Crime Laboratory conducted an autopsy. The examination revealed subtle but distinctive indicators consistent with smothering, including facial tissue damage and specific bruising patterns.
The upper lip was excised and routinely processed for histology, sections showing remarkably good tissue preservation and extensive recent bruising.
Investigators also noted petechial hemorrhaging and bruises on his neck. Dr. Eric Hutchins concluded that had Donald died from homicidal violence consistent with strangulation or smothering, and the manner of death was ruled homicide. Now the case turned into a murder investigation. Family members told detectives about Donald's accusations of theft and his plans to leave. Police found out that the day he died, he was supposed to be moving back to Idaho, and on that same day, he told family that Dean had confronted him about the recently closed bank accounts. Investigators reviewed Donald's bank accounts and noticed big withdrawals that lined up with times when Samantha was around. They also uncovered forged signatures on checks and withdrawal slips, and that Samantha had taken control of Donald's finances by forging documents and faking his signature. This all came to Donald's attention after he'd moved to Montana. Then, police found out that days after Donald's death, Samantha had tried to prevent the autopsy from happening, even threatening a deputy coroner with legal action if it was conducted. YCSO detectives got a warrant to search Dean's cell phone records. The text exchanges between Dean and Samantha were damning. In one message, Dean said,
"I killed your effing grandfather. I helped you forge a notary. I've done more for you than I've ever done for anybody for free."
Another text said,
"I have done everything you asked of me, including what I did to your grandfather, and it's still not good enough."
Audio recordings caught Samantha's angry response, where she called him a, quote, snitch, and a, quote, effing rat. As if all of this wasn't enough, in March 2025, detectives interviewed one of Dean's relatives who told them that he had verbally admitted to smothering Donald to make Samantha happy. Investigators also found Donald's new will naming Samantha as the sole beneficiary. Even after Donald's death, she'd tried to collect his money, telling the bank that because she was listed as the beneficiary and she was supposedly the next of kin, they should give her the money in his bank. Detectives learned that Dean had a previous criminal record, and he had pleaded guilty to theft in Wyoming. During interviews, they learned that Dean resented the financial restrictions Donald placed on them.
Wait, he hated that Donald put restrictions on his own money?
Yes, hard to believe, right? Relatives said Dean barely worked and saw Donald's money as his means of support. When Donald cut Samantha's access to his funds and talked about moving out, Dean threatened him. All of this evidence supported premeditation and financial motive. Investigators believe Donald was killed sometime late on November 9th or early on November 10th. They said that on that night, Dean smothered Donald in his motorhome, most likely with his hands or a pillow. Remember, the autopsy showed no external injuries, but the medical examiner saw evidence of asphyxiation and petechial hemorrhaging consistent with smothering. So police went to them to ask them about all of this evidence they'd collected. Both Dean and Samantha denied any knowledge of Donald's financial issues or the circumstances surrounding his death. Samantha claimed she had access to his accounts but never took money without permission. On June 30th, 2025, Dean was arrested on an unrelated warrant for failing to appear in traffic court. 2 days later, on July 2nd, he was charged with deliberate homicide. At his first court appearance on July 3rd, he pleaded not guilty. Given the seriousness of the charges and his prior felony record, Yellowstone County Attorney Scott Tweeto pushed for a high bond. Judge Bradley Neeland set bail at $500,000 and ordered GPS monitoring if Dean was released. He remains in the Yellowstone County Detention Facility. Then, on August 22nd, Samantha was hit with her own set of charges: elder exploitation, elder abuse, fraud, forgery, theft, and solicitation of deliberate homicide. Investigators said she forged dozens of checks, drained more than $38,000 from Donald's accounts, and altered his will. They said that she tried to stop his autopsy by claiming he had an infectious disease. Samantha was booked into Yellowstone County Detention Facility, and on August 27th, she pleaded not guilty to all of her charges. Her attorney called her, quote, a gentle soul, but prosecutors argued that she manipulated Dean and orchestrated her grandfather's murder for money. Attorney Tweeto requested a high bond for her as well, explaining that
this exploitation is beyond the norm. As alleged, it's just a terrible, tragic situation.
Bail was also set at $500,000. As of this recording, done in September 2025, Dean has not yet gone to trial. Prosecutors are expected to present the autopsy evidence showing Donald died from smothering, the text messages where Dean admitted to killing him, and testimony from the relative who said Dean confessed. They will argue that Dean had motive, which was to protect his and Samantha's access to Donald's money. They will present the means and opportunity, which will most likely be that Dean was alone with Donald in the trailer. They will likely portray Samantha as a co-conspirator and argue that Dean killed Donald at her request. We're guessing that defense attorneys are going to challenge the reliability of the text messages and confession, probably arguing they were sent in anger or exaggeration. They may also claim that Donald's death was an accident or natural, citing his age and health issues. They will probably push that fact that there were no eyewitnesses to the killing and try to introduce doubt about the timeline. Because there is no physical evidence linking Dean directly to the crime besides the messages and confession, the defense may argue the state's case relies too heavily on circumstantial evidence and the testimony of a relative with motives of their own. Samantha's case is proceeding separately. Her defense will probably claim that she never asked Dean to kill Donald and that she did not steal his money. They may argue that any money she took was for legitimate expenses. If convicted, she faces decades in prison. The cases are expected to go to trial in late 2025 or early 2026. If convicted of deliberate homicide, Dean faces a minimum of 10 years and a maximum of 100 years or life in Montana State Prison. Samantha faces up to life in prison if found guilty. Their eventual sentences will depend on plea negotiations, trial outcomes, and sentencing hearings.
That's it for today's Midweek Mini. What do you think of Kai's predictions into how the trials might go? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. You can also let us know your thoughts in the comments or over in the Patreon community, patreon.com/loveandmurder. And remember, Love and Murder is completely listener-funded. Your support keeps these stories alive. Head over to patreon.com/loveandmurder to join for free or sign up for a bonus tier at $3 a month and above. That gets you bonus cases, case extras, ad-free episodes, and exclusive series like Serial Killer Corner, where the latest episode covers the disturbing story of David Brian Pierce, the so-called Hollywood producer who turned out to be a predator. Thanks for listening, thanks for your support, and we'll see you in the next episode.